Everyone wants to achieve some level of success, but most people seem to look outwards. What are the strategies? What are the steps? What are the gurus telling you to do? And for whatever reason, looking inwards just isn't happening nearly as often as it should. And if you're someone who contemplates your own success, if you tend to reflect on the mistakes you made, the goals you have, maybe you vision board, set a to-do list, and constantly check in with yourself about what it is that you want to accomplish, this is the moment where I'm going to encourage you to stop looking outwards and instead start looking inwards. I read a post today that was talking about an article that really described this phenomenon I've noticed myself, but it's this concept that most people feel so incredibly uncomfortable sitting alone with their thoughts. And whether that's picking a vice, doom scrolling, distracting yourself, most people are finding some other alternative to actually avoid being alone with their thoughts. And I get it, it's uncomfortable. And most people aren't used to it. But you're doing yourself a massive disservice by avoiding the things that you're actually thinking. Not to mention that the majority of what we think is unconscious and drives our behavior without us realizing. So when you're trying to avoid your thoughts, stuff them down, pretend that they don't exist, well, spoiler alert, they still do. And they're still there driving your behavior, sabotaging your decision making, hijacking your thought process. But you're just pretending that it doesn't. And so when you're working so incredibly hard on your goals, when you're working so incredibly hard, putting in hours and hours every week, hustling, pushing yourself, losing sleep, not drinking enough water, not eating enough, sacrificing your social life, when you're doing all the things, but you're overlooking the actual thoughts that are driving your behavior, well, can you see how that disconnect, how that mismatch is actually harming you and sabotaging you in ways that you don't even recognize? And so for most people, sitting alone with their thoughts is incredibly uncomfortable. In the post I read today, they were talking about an experiment where adults were offered a choice to sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes or to administer an electric charge in themselves, like to shock themselves and feel physical pain. And the majority of people picked physical pain over sitting alone with their thoughts. I mean, that's ridiculous. But how often do you find yourself doing the same thing where something's uncomfortable and on the surface you might feel like you're procrastinating, but below the surface you're actually doing everything that you can to avoid feeling that discomfort? Where maybe you're feeling uncertain, you have some doubt creeping in and you don't know where the doubt is coming from, why it's showing up now, or what you're going to do about it. And so you do anything that you can to make yourself feel better. Maybe that's like me, where you just eat extra sugar, make a cup of tea and throw an extra couple spoonfuls of sugar in. You binge chocolate, maybe you eat a lot of snacks. Maybe you just do something else that's not equally healthy. The point is that most of us have these bad behaviors that we're doing on a daily basis that's completely holding us back from achieving our goals that at the same time we're working so incredibly hard on to try and achieve. And so logically, it's like, well, I'm doing the right thing and I'm taking the right action and I'm putting in the hours and I'm following the plan. But unconsciously, your foundation is cracked to begin with. So if you find yourself feeling uncomfortable and avoiding sitting alone with your thoughts, I hear you. I get it. It's hard, especially when you're just starting out, but that doesn't mean that it's something that you avoid doing forever. That doesn't mean that it's something that's okay to continue avoiding. So when it comes to changing your behavior, I'm a big fan of exposure therapy. And this is essentially exposing yourself to the change that you're too uncomfortable or worried of making. And so for you, that might look like buying a journal, a blank notebook, and writing out your thoughts at the end of the day for 5 minutes. That might look like buying a guided journal and answering the questions, even if it's just one page at a time. That might look like setting a timer 5, 10, 15 minutes just to start, and just sitting in silence and seeing what comes up, even if it's uncomfortable. That means putting yourself into intentional situations where you have to acknowledge what it is that you're thinking. Because whatever you're thinking is going to continue playing out on a loop, whether you like it or not. You see, an interesting thing happens with our psychology where the more that we try to suppress our thoughts, the more that we actually end up thinking about it. I mean, here's a classic example of you. Don't think of a pink elephant. I mean it. Don't think of a pink elephant. Why are you thinking of a pink elephant right now? I told you not to. And so the more that you do this to yourself, the more you're going to think of that pink elephant that you don't want to think about. And even if that elephant looks like the cutest cartoon you've ever seen, if you don't want to think about it, but you're trying to suppress it, you're going to end up thinking about it. Maybe you'll even end up dreaming about it because it'll be stuck in your unconscious mind. So the point is, most people avoid looking at their actual driver of behavior. It doesn't matter what your strategy is. There's more than one strategy that works. It doesn't matter what your tactics are. There's more than one type of tactic that will work for you. And not all tactics work for everyone equally. So much of it depends on your psychology, on your mindset, and on the initial thoughts that you're having. So no matter how uncomfortable it feels to sit alone with your thoughts, this is your encouragement to go ahead and start. Starting is really the hardest part. Just like if you hadn't been to the gym for months and you suddenly had to go and run 5K on the treadmill, it would be hard and you might huff and puff and not even make it. But if you went to the gym consistently and you put in the reps and you got over the initial discomfort and the sore muscles and the extra laundry, after a while you'd start to enjoy the process and you'd see benefits that ripple out into your entire life. Not just a better looking body, not just improved physical health, not just increased strength, feeling better, thinking better, showing up with more confidence, having more energy, sleeping better, stress relief, people responding to you differently based on the improvements in the way that you look. The same thing goes for how you think. Yes, it's uncomfortable in the beginning. Yes, you have to do it. Yes, you have to push yourself to continue to do it. But once you do, once you hit that tipping point and you get to the other side, you will start to identify your own patterns better. You'll start to see the moments of self-sabotage earlier. You'll start to identify where you're holding yourself back versus where you're actually lacking a skills, a strategy, or something else. The payout, especially when you're in a position of leadership or running your own business, it is worth it. And so before you try to switch strategy, pivot your brand, think of a new direction, stop and think about your own thoughts first, because those are the fundamental drivers of all of your behavior. And if you're overlooking them, you're doing yourself a major disservice. I hope you enjoyed this episode, short and sweet. And now go ahead and sit with your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.